Welcome to Seeing Dead People, the mystery storytelling podcast with a clairvoyant twist.
Oh, you know on number 8, there's a staircase going up, but there's a lady to the right entrance, just beyond the picture, like a house, I smell candles. It's like a housekeeper who's going through the house at night to make sure everything's closed.
Okay, so you're seeing her in picture 8 beside the staircase, not going up the staircase?
Nope, she's going into, there's a door right across from the staircase.
Yes.
The one that goes down. She's going in there to check. She's got white hair, her hair's in a bun, she's got that little white thing around her collar, dark uniform on, and I can smell the candle wax.
And now, Radio Sydney presents Seeing Dead People, Episode 8, The Eerie Phoenix of Bond Street.
Darcy, hello, how are you this weekend?
Hello, Nicola, I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm great, and I wish you Happy New Year.
Well, the same to you. Happy New Year.
Great, I think it's going to be a good year for Seeing Dead People, and I think this is a good start-off show. And so I'll start telling you a little bit about someone that I've nicknamed a Phoenix.
A Phoenix, okay.
This spooky tale of an uncanny human phoenix rising not once, not twice, but many times begins over 200 years ago in the early 1800s, when our country of Canada didn't even exist. Instead, there were two provinces called Upper Canada and Lower Canada, which by 1841 were combined into the British colony called the Province of Canada. So, why do we care about this little history lesson, Darcy? Well, of course, we should understand how our beloved country came about, but in particular today, we're going to learn about someone, a phoenix born again many times, who was instrumental in Canada's birth and who continued to affect our country's future decades later. But I'm not going to reveal our famous phoenix's identity just yet, Darcy. I'm going to continue a bit more with some more mystery. Our story today zeroes in on a notorious haunted house said by many to be the most haunted house in Toronto. There are dozens of eyewitness experiences of paranormal occurrences in this house over many decades, and there are recognized historical figures whose ghosts are part of those activities. And last, but certainly of a major importance, visitors continue to report ongoing supernatural experiences. So, it sounds like a perfect, inexplicable phenomenon for seeing dead people, doesn't it, Darcy?
It sure does.
But there is a little bit of an outstanding issue. Have you any idea what it might be?
That there's a ghost?
That's a good one, but that's not the outstanding issue. But there's something about that ghost. We'll move on. But yes, I'm just teasing you there.
Just a minute. It's a man. Okay. Definitely picking up man. And I feel like even now he's in the limelight.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't know the character that's in the limelight, but I even feel now he's in the limelight. He's in trouble.
He's in trouble?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. The issue is kind of unusual for places with spooky histories, but it's another little intrigue I'm not going to quite reveal to you just yet. So I'm going to take you today to our urban setting. I'd like you to look at photographs 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to welcome you to 82 Bond Street in Toronto, a modest 3-story brick building. It's right in downtown. The little house was built in 1858. It's included in the list of the oldest buildings in Hogtown. And as you look at the 3 pics, Darcy, it's nothing spectacular like Craigdarroch Castle or even menacing like the old Don Jail, is it?
No, but it is connected to the Don Jail. Like there's a connection to this building and prisoners.
Okay, interesting. All right. It's just a building, a stark Georgian style, built from sooty pale brick with only a black door and a number of black shuttered multi-pane windows as adornments. And yet this plain Jane, well, I'm going to call her plain Georgia from now on, was saved from demolition in 1927 when the twin row houses on either side of her bit the dust. So, Darcy, why did the folks in Toronto think so highly of number 82 Bond Street?
You know what it makes me think of? When you say 82 Bond, it makes me think of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, right, Baker Street.
Yeah, and so one, it had to be a man of importance, and I think we've already discussed him somewhere along the line by the feels of it, and it's definitely historical connection, plus it has to do with whoever lived in it.
Right on.
Okay, but I still say there's some connection to either whoever lived in it or whether this was used as a jail at one time, but there's definitely a strong connection.
To the Don Jail.
Well, to the Don Jail or the concept of jail.
Okay, all right. Before I would divulge the little house's historic significance, let me tell you a little bit about her history. She was originally a family home from about 1859 to roughly 1873, before becoming a boarding house for decades, and then, as I mentioned, she escaped being destroyed by the skin of her black shutters to be protected as an historic site in the 1920s. For years after, Plain Georgia was owned by a non-profit organization, and in 1950, when her interior was restored to the genteel 1860s look and furnishing of her original Victorian middle-class occupants, Little Plain Georgia was reopened as a museum. When she was donated to the City of Toronto just a decade later, so in 1960, something had changed. Something incredible, but kept very secret was happening behind those multi-paned windows. Have you any ideas now?
Well, I keep hearing jail, but I know she's haunted.
Okay.
Does the name William or William W.J. A.W.?
Well, we'll keep those in mind.
Okay. But, I mean, I know she's been haunted by a lady and a man, and I also, I don't understand why I keep seeing prisoners walk. Or maybe they're not prisoners. Maybe they are soldiers.
Okay. And why do you think they're soldiers?
Because I just realized that they're walking freely. They're not shackled.
And where are they walking freely?
Inside the house.
Oh, okay, cool. All right.
Outside around the house as well.
Neat. And what sort of garb are they wearing?
Well, it looks like a British type of uniform, like as you ever saw that painting where they had the fight between in 1817, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, the red and gold and dark uniform.
Yeah, I know the one.
Okay, and strangely enough, I see a gray uniform, which made me think of Confederate.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we had a Confederate issue last week, didn't we? Last time.
Oh, okay.
We talked about one of your times when you helped a ghost pass over and it ended up being a Confederate.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm going to give you, those are interesting ideas, Darcy, and I think they're going to play out in the future here, but I'm going to give you a hint. When the heavy skeleton keys were handed over to Toronto officials, they were accompanied by a lengthy list of all the artifacts included in the official bequest, which is pretty standard practice. But at the very bottom of the list, the last, and I have to say, quite astonishing entry read, "One ghost."
Oh, I've got something for you then.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure you can see the ghost in the house right now.
And which picture are you looking at, Darce?
I haven't turned to a picture. I just got an image of a picture, and I've got red and blue and white with it. That's what I'm seeing on the ghost.
Red and blue and white. Okay, cool. And is that ghost male or female, or can you tell?
I'd love to say it's a female.
Okay. Well, I would say that the fact that they put on an official document in Toronto, one ghost, was pretty amazing. It would only be the second time a ghost was listed in Toronto's official government records. And the first one, by the way, relates to Toronto's Toronto Island's famously haunted lighthouse, a towering structure that we might cover in a future episode of Seeing Dead People.
Okay.
But before Plain Georgia became City of Toronto property in 1960, something rare and astonishing took place within her little sooty brick walls. Any ideas?
None.
Okay,
None.
that's all right.
Nothing to me at this point.
All right, well, I'm not. It's kind of it's really something that one wouldn't necessarily leap to mind, I have to admit.
Okay, just don't say what it is yet.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe we can carry on, or does having it there need to be with the story?
No, we'll carry on. We'll just we can kind of rework ourselves around as we go. Not a problem. So, have you had a look at the first 3 photos?
The first 3, yes.
Okay. Now I'd like you to look at the next 3 photos, which are 4, 5, and 6. So we have a formal dining room, an informal room, and a parlor. Do you see anything jumping out at you in those 3 rooms?
Just one second. Let me have a look. So, obviously, a ghostly disturbance happened. Someone died in the house during that time frame. Okay, pictures.
Yeah, 4, 5, and 6.
4, 5, and 6. 5 is 4 is a dining room.
That's right.
Okay, and it's funny because the one chair up against the wallpaper there looks like there's a figure in it.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then if you go down to number 5, which looks like, I guess, dining sitting room.
Yeah, it sort of looks like a country kitchen of some sort.
Now look at the bed.
I see the bed.
Open it up a little more. Doesn't it look like there's a person lying under the blanket?
Well, you're right. It's certainly got a sort of a bulky look to it, doesn't it? The comforter.
Yeah, because it looks like 2 legs and arms and a body.
Yeah, it does. Now that I pinch it up, you're right. It is kind of odd looking. I wonder who's hiding under there.
Well, that looks more like a child than it does an adult.
Okay, yeah. It's not as large. You're right.
And then the next one would be a parlor by the looks of it because there's a piano in it.
Yeah.
And I can hear the music playing.
Can you?
Yeah. So someone was playing that piano.
What kind of music do you hear or can you tell?
It's old. It's not new music. It would be more like Strauss, something, or light, like, if you were playing, what am I thinking of? You Are My Sunshine, sort of something that's light.
Okay, well, I mentioned to you that the house had a little bit of an unusual problem. And the problem seems to be, Darcy, that our resident ghosts did a little Rip Van Winkle time out since their first recorded paranormal shenanigans only occurred 75 years after they died. So from the late 1800s to the mid-1900s, no one officially reported anything paranormal in this row house.
Okay, and this is the MacKenzie House, is it not?
Yeah, and how do you know that?
Because that's the name that popped into my head when you said row house, and I was trying to think, there's a connection to the people who lived in the house. This is the house they lost, and then got back, and then lost again.
Okay.
Lost, got back, lost again.
Okay, well then why do you think that whoever the ghosts are, we haven't gone that far yet, would not be visible to anyone for about 150 years?
Well, it could be the fact that the house wasn't really disturbed for 150 years. But if they went in and redid it, they may have did something wrong. And, like, in other words, the layout's wrong or whatever. It feels like it has to do, too, with the separation of the other houses around it.
Okay, well, the houses on either side of it, it's twins, or I guess they were triplets, were destroyed in 1920. But in 1950, there was a lot of work done on the house. And as I said, it became a museum, and then it was transferred title-wise over to the city of Toronto as a museum. And that's when the interesting things started to happen.
I still think it has something to do with the MacKenzie themselves.
Okay, all right.
Mr. MacKenzie or Mrs. MacKenzie, it has some, or their son. They did have a son, right?
We haven't even talked about the family or the people, Darcy, but yes, they had a son. But you've leapt way far ahead here.
Okay.
But that's all right. I mean, I'm astonished as always. We had in the 60s, the first sort of references to hauntings and ghostly apparitions occurred. There were two sets of husband and wife caretakers, live-in caretakers, during that time, and they claimed to have experiences, bizarre, scary experiences in these houses, including seeing people in the bedrooms. Now, this happened roughly at the same time as it became this museum, and some say, quite cynically, that it was a way for the museum to get some marketing and to get some interest in the community. Others, of course, dispute that and say that these were true apparitions happening. The key seems to be that the revelation that these individuals who were the caretakers, having experienced these odd, scary incidents, that kind of blew the front door wide open, so to speak. And since then, there have been dozens of reported sightings, sounds, and uncanny experiences within the wallpapered rooms of Little Plain, Georgia. As I said earlier, it's now considered to be one of the most, if not the most, haunted house in Toronto. So let's roam further through this haunted house. What leaps out at you, if anything, in the next group of photos 7, 8, 9, and 10? We've got a shot of a kitchen.
Yeah.
We've got a shot of a staircase going upstairs. We've got a large bedroom with a couple of beds in it and the dressers. And then we've got a small kind of box room bedroom. Any vibes on any of those?
Well, the bedroom gives me, hair on the back of my neck stand up.
Okay.
I would definitely say there has been some form of paranormal activity. And it's a man dressed in, as though he's going riding.
Oh, like riding breeches in that sort of style?
Yeah. That's number 9.
Okay.
Number 7, I just expect people to come in and sort of put their wares on the table. That's it.
Okay.
There's a little caution. Oh, on number 8, there's a staircase going up, but there's a lady to the right entrance, just beyond the picture, like I smell candles. It's like a housekeeper who's going through the house at night to make sure everything's closed.
Okay, so you're seeing her in picture 8 beside the staircase, not going up the staircase?
Nope, she's going into, there's a door right across from the staircase.
Yes.
The one that goes down. She's going in there to check. She's got white hair, her hair's in a bun, she's got that little white thing around her collar, dark uniform on, and I can smell the candle wax.
Oh, cool. Okay, so we have at least one ghost has arisen right at the moment for you?
Well, the boy in the bed, too.
Oh, you think it was a boy?
Yep. And
Okay.
there's a lady in the sewing room.
Okay, hang on. The sewing room, was that the little box room I called it?
Yes, the number 10.
Number 10, yeah, right. That you see a lady in there?
Yes.
Where is she?
Just over by, not quite at the window.
Okay.
I would say close to where the sewing machine is. And again, this could be a maid. It doesn't quite look like a lady of distinction.
Okay. She's not the same person you see in the photo of the staircase?
She could be number 8 because the housekeeper would have done everything.
Right. Okay, so it could be the same person.
Yes.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the unworldly experiences that people have reported. They include pretty typical ones that we've discussed in the past. Footsteps going up and down that staircase, children's voices in some of the rooms, cold spots throughout, the parlor piano playing on its own, an empty rocking chair creaking back and forth in the kitchen, toilets flushing by themselves, water taps gushing without any assistance. And there has been, I have to admit, some pranks over the years. One particularly disturbing prank was someone hanged a noose over the staircase, but that was just, I guess, as some kind of little joke. But in fact, there are some real disturbing incidents that give one real pause. And I'm wondering if you're getting a better sense now of any of those.
Well, I'm sort of thinking there's been a fire. Someone's gone down the head first down the staircase. And that joke about the noose, I don't think it's necessarily a joke. Yeah, I am thinking there is a possibility someone hung themselves from the upper landing of the staircase.
Oh my God, okay. Would you say...
I feel objects being moved and shifted as well.
Where do you see those happening, Darcy?
That's in number 7. I feel like things have come off the cupboard and been put in other places. And I feel there's another room, I just haven't seen it yet.
Okay, so when you're talking about number 7, that was sort of the kitchen-looking room. You're saying that there might be a poltergeist type of activity going on there where someone's playing games, moving things around?
I don't necessarily think it's a game. It feels more like I'm getting ready to bake something.
Oh, okay, so somebody's actually participating in that room.
Yes.
Oh, all right, neat. Well, now, before I disclose any more, but you pretty well divined much of my characters anyway, our 2 main ghostly characters, before I zero in on them, I'm going to ask you to look at a couple of rooms with personal significance to them. Okay, so if you look at photos 11, 12, and 13, you'll see a bedroom, a study, and a study desk. Can you tell us anything about the person who might have been living in those originally?
Well, this strikes me as being male, not female.
Okay.
Okay, so that would have been the Mister of the house.
Right.
The one, do you know if there was ever a dead person in number 12 on the floor?
I have no idea. Do you see a dead person?
Well, I keep getting the image of a body laying on the floor. So either he could have died from anything. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was a murder.
Okay.
Okay. But this one would mean, 12 to me means it's male. Maybe the wife would come in once in a while and sit and chat. But I really feel like 11, 12, and 13 all belong to the gentleman of the house.
Right. Okay. That you're pretty close there. And before I finally reveal the names of our target ghosts, I'd like you to look at photos 14 and 15. You're going to see an amazing machine, looks right out of Dickens' time, was located and is located in the basement of the museum. Can you tell us anything about the machine and its owner?
Okay, so this is a printing press, right?
Correct.
Okay, but it's not just printing, like it's blueprints, it's maps, it's everything. It's not just journals or books or stuff like that. Like this press could do more than what one would have thought at the time.
Okay.
Okay, it's like a mapping out land. Okay, so I'd like to say it belongs to him.
Okay.
Oh, interesting. Okay, do you know if the basement ever had a fire?
That I can't tell you either, sorry.
Oh, it's either the basement or the next floor, but there seems to have been, I can see smoke rising.
Oh, okay. Is that in number 15?
Yeah. Can I ask, is this part of a rebellion? Part of a rebellion? Like someone going to war about something and maybe using words opposed to people fighting each other?
Absolutely, Darcy. You've snagged it again and you've hooped me another time as usual. There is a discussion, and a rebellion is very important to the main individual in this storyline. Yep, we'll get to more details later, but you're right on.
All right. But I feel that there's two men that are significant about that represent this rebellion, and it's not like they're opposing forces to each other, but they actually have the same idea or concept. They're just saying it different.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I'm going to say that one of the ghostly experiences or occurrences that happen in this little row house is that this big printing press clanks into life on its own.
Oh my goodness.
That would be pretty scary, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd be leaving.
Exactly.
Or I'd be looking to see what they're printing. Maybe there's a message.
Yes, that's right. Maybe there's like a Ouija board, but in the 1860s style. Okay, I'm finally going to come down to revealing our characters' names. But before I do, excuse me, we haven't done this before. I want you to look at photo number 16. It's a person's signature, and I was just really curious. It's our main character's signature. I was just really curious what you might be able to tell from a signature.
Well, he was a very open person. Very much when he was going in a direction, he went in that direction. It was really hard for him at times to put on his brakes. But there are moments when he's very secretive, that he can carry off a plan without other people knowing it.
Okay.
And what I find interesting is the character that comes out in his signature. Okay? Because it's like he's leaning into the fray, so to speak, instead of some people, when even if they're right-handed, their signature sort of slant sideways.
Yep.
Or go straight up and down.
Yeah.
Or then there's the ones who believe in a cause, and like his signature, he believes in a cause, but he has a little hesitation around the cause because he needs to know all the facts that are there before he can go forward.
So would you say he's a very analytical kind of guy then?
I think intelligent, analytical, but also a little bit of, if I can stir this pot and get a reaction, I'm going to, but I'm not, that's normally not how he comes across, but he will slowly stir the pot until he gets the reaction he's looking for.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. And you get all this from the signature?
Yes.
And can you read the name or whatever? Can you read anything in that signature? I can, but I only because I know whose signature it is.
Well, I was looking at it, and I thought at first it was a D or an N, but it could be a W, depending on who taught him his letters.
Right.
And the only thing I can make out is the MAR, and I'm guessing that's like supposed to be MacKenzie.
Okay. Well, I got to say, Darcy, you are remarkable. I'm going to tell you about our main man, and I want you to look at photos 17 and 18. So you can see our main man. He's got quite a craggy face, but I see a real spark in his eyes, and you picked up with that idea of that he's kind of a guy who stir the pot. His name, Darcy, is William Lyon MacKenzie. And yes, it's a very familiar name, but it's not who you might initially think. This guy wasn't William Lyon Mackenzie King, one of our more colorful prime ministers. This fellow was his grandfather, and 82 Bond Street, the little house I've nicknamed Plain Georgia, is now commonly known as... You said it earlier.
I said it earlier?
Yeah, MacKenzie House.
MacKenzie House.
I don't know how you could possibly have known that, but it is now known as MacKenzie House. Well, it has been for quite some time, and is now MacKenzie House Museum. So having a look at those two photographs, black and white photographs of William Lyon MacKenzie in about 1860 and 1850, roughly, can you tell us anything about this gentleman?
Well, first of all, I love his personality. He seems to have that look of mischief all over him.
Doesn't he just?
He does, and he's very, well, William, I have to say, I remember saying that name at the beginning, and now I understand why.
Yeah.
But he seems like he believes in truth, okay? And he's one of those seekers who's going to go out and find the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe sometimes he has to color outside of the lines to get it.
Right.
Okay? But he has this will, and he's actually, I think we talked about his grandson before, right? Or his son?
We briefly mentioned that he had a son, yes?
Okay. It's too bad his son didn't follow us sternly in his footsteps.
But his grandson did.
Yeah. But his son was the weaker of the two men. But when I look at him, like, he must look, his grandson has to look like him.
Yeah, I think if we had a pic of William Lyon Mackenzie King, he probably does have some kind of resemblance to this fellow.
Okay. I really like his energy. I feel like this is a fair man, a just man, and a man of his word.
Well, that's really fascinating, because I got to tell you a little bit about William. I'm going to expand on some of your thoughts. He was a remarkable and legendary gentleman, and it was often called a firebrand, which is a good old-fashioned term for a mover and a shaker, someone with strong opinions who got into the fray, gave as good as he got, and that's just the kind of person you described from the photographs.
Yeah.
With his red hair, feisty personality, and jaunty look, it suited William to a T to be nicknamed a firebrand, and I think, as you said, you can really get a glimpse of his kind of mischievous personality in photos 17 and 18. I called him a phoenix because he had so many disasters career-wise. It seems to me he rose from the ashes from one occupation into another over and over throughout his life, so a phoenix he is. Scottish-born, William Lyon Mackenzie came to Canada in 1820 and soon found the most important calling of his life, politics. First, he began challenging the unfairness of British rule, using a newspaper as his platform. When his office was wrecked by political opponents, he turned himself into a politician and became the leader of a radical provincial wing from which he was elected as an MPP in Upper Canada in 1828. Now, you'd think for most people that would have been pretty much their lifelong accomplishment, but not our William Lyon Mackenzie. He continued to decry government mismanagement and focused his politics down to a narrower level, becoming the first mayor of Toronto. Earlier on, I said he had a pivotal role in the creation of Canada. In fact, even though his political efforts to improve Canadian lives occurred before the birth of our country in 1867, his efforts for a country with a fair democracy were crucial in the eventual formation of Canada. So, when he was Toronto's mayor, his dissatisfaction with the British government still festered. A couple of years later, what did William do? He led 800 followers into the Rebellion of 1837, attempting to overthrow the British, only to fail to seize power. So, Darcy, how in the world did you snag the idea that this man was involved in a rebellion?
It was just a feel in the house because remember I said I saw like a soldier of some sort walking through?
Absolutely.
And so to me then, that is about someone who would go to war, who would fight for what he believed in, and whether he was 100% sure of who he was or what he was fighting for, if he believed in it, that's what counted.
Yeah, and I can sense the idea, if you can see soldiers, that you could glean that there's war. But to use the term rebellion, because it's not a very common term to be used in these days. It's sort of an old-fashioned term. But you snagged it, that this rebellion of 1837, a famous event in Canada's history, that you were able to come up with that word. I think that's really amazing.
Because that's what I felt. I felt like, do you remember the stories about the Underground Railroad?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's the kind of rebellion I saw. It was secretive until I really got it going, and by then, what were they going to do about it? Really?
Yeah.
Their hands were already tied.
Yeah, well, they failed. And as I said, down went the Phoenix one more time, right down in flames. And this time he had to flee to the United States, where he was jailed few months later for trying to incite yet another rebellion. And the guy never gave up. And finally, his little star twinkled again and he received a pardon. And back he came to Toronto in 1849. Now, you won't be surprised, Darcy, to learn that this lifelong radical jumped right back into the political fray as a journalist and a newspaper publisher, hence the printing press in the basement. And he was again elected as an MPP.
Okay.
So he was reborn one last time, or was it the last time, Darcy? Can you tell us any more about William Lyon Mackenzie rising again?
I feel like he did rise again because I feel as though if he went in, I think he may have even ended in politics, period. Like in some sort of role of politics, because that's what it feels like. He may have just continued on, but in a different sense.
Right. Well, he continued as an MPP. And as I mentioned, the husband and wife caretakers reported that they'd seen a short frock-coated man. So in other words, a man in wearing the garb of Mackenzie's time of the 1860s, sort of Victorian male garb. They noticed this individual in the bedroom that you said was the male bedroom, the master bedroom for William Lyon Mackenzie. And that kind of event started a plethora of sighting and incidents ever since. Now, we haven't talked at all about William's family. Any idea that whether he had a family, what it was about?
Well, I think he had a son, his wife. I don't see girls. So I'm not sure if he only had the one son or if he had two.
Okay.
Okay, because I feel the image of two, but I only feel one.
All right.
And so it's a different feel. So I can sort of see the image of two children, but I'm seeing one child that seems to dominate. And other than that, his wife seems to be, to me, I don't know if she seemed young, she seemed, what's the word I want? Were you mellowable?
Yes.
That's what she felt like, but she was someone to reckon with, too, as well. I don't think she's someone I would have just said, she's just the wife of him.
Okay, she had her own spirit, her own
Thank you.
self-esteem?
Yeah.
Does any particular old-fashioned female name jump to your mind as to what she might have been called?
I suppose it's Elizabeth, is it?
No, but that's a name that's got a similar sound.
Okay, just give me a minute.
Sure.
I'm getting the E sound. But it's more like a Spanish name opposed to an Anglo-Saxon name.
Okay.
Is there something? Liz or something like that. That's what I'm picking up.
Okay, well, you're very, very close, Darcy. Her name was Isabel. And interestingly enough, William must have really dug the name Isabel because when he was in Scotland, he had one child out of wedlock, believe it or not, with a gal named Isabel Reed. Then he immigrated to Canada and later married another woman named Isabel in 1822. And that Isabel bore him many children, 2 of whom were named Isabel themselves. Only 6 survived to adulthood, and yes, there were 2 sons and 4 daughters that lived.
Okay, but that's weird because it's the boys I see the strongest than I do the girls.
Ah, yeah, that is interesting.
And if he was hooked on that name, one would think that those girls would show up.
You'd think, because Isabel's in his life in a huge way. Well, yeah. Do you see anything about the wife herself?
I'm not picking up, her character for me isn't as strong. I do know that she's probably in the house with him. Can I ask, was he about 5'9", do you know?
He was quite short.
Okay, yeah, I didn't feel like he was over 5'9", but he had this, like I said, this dynamic energy.
Yep.
So, but for the wife, I'm really not picking up that much about her, except I think she's in the house as well, because the house seems to be significant to her.
Right. Okay, well, she is they think she is one of the main ghostly apparitions in the house. And the caretaker, one of the caretakers, when she was in the house, was woken, she said, by this long-haired female ghost who shook her on the shoulder one time and disappeared, and then another time woke her up and slapped her in the face and then disappeared.
Oh, that was nice of her.
Yeah, it seems a bit cruel, don't you think?
Yeah.
So that's the tale of William Lyon MacKenzie of MacKenzie House. I think he really was a phoenix, don't you?
I do too, because he hit the ashes and came up again, as you put it.
Yeah, many, many times, and it seems that he and at least Isabel are still there, and perhaps there are other ghosts, as you've seen, from their lives or from the lives that have occurred since they were in the house. And just so you know, William died in that bedroom in the house. Well, at least I believe he did. And Isabel stayed there for 10 years after his death before she left.
Okay.
Now, normally, Darcy, we would have a listener's question, but I've got something nifty today I want to focus on. It was an unusual treasure I discovered while searching for the photographs for this episode, and I can't wait to ask you what you think about it. I want you to look at photograph 20. It's a photograph taken by a fellow named Greg Stacy in the MacKenzie House Museum, and Greg has very kindly allowed me to use many of his MacKenzie House photographs for this episode. And I want you to have a look and tell me what you think and see. It's only fair to tell you, Darcy, that it's not related directly to William MacKenzie or his family in particular, but it is in the MacKenzie House collection for a reason. What do you see? What do you think it is?
Okay, well, it's obviously a box.
Yep.
But I'd like to say someone's inside of it. Like, I want to pick it up and shake it.
Okay.
But it's interesting because it's a marketplace box, but this would explain, because on the side it says prisoner's card box.
Right.
But this can explain the idea of the prisoner inside the house.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. But it seems like a box where I would put my secrets and wishes into.
You'd put wishes in the box?
Yeah, not the good ones, bad ones.
Bad ones. Okay.
I'd put in there if I wanted to get even with someone.
Oh, okay.
Like it's my witch's bag, my witch's box, where you put in the things that you don't want other people to see, because if they see them, they might judge you by them or take them away from you.
Huh. Well, that's fascinating. Do you want to hear a little bit more about it?
Yes.
Well, it's called a prisoner's box or a rebellion box. It's very small, like 2 inches long and about 1 inch wide and high, so it's not a big thing. And it's called a prisoner's box because it was carved out of scrap wood by prisoners of the failed 1837 rebellion, one of whom was William Lyon MacKenzie, but he didn't make this little box. They were created, they carved them out of these pits of wood. They were gifts for their loved ones. And they inscribed, and you can see there's writing on the box. They inscribed the little tiny box with quotes, messages to friends and loved ones.
Oh.
So it's a bit different than what you were thinking.
Yeah.
This little box was made in 1838 by a fellow named Martin Switzerland for a gal named Jane Bryant. And the side of the box has a great heavy-duty quote, "May vengeance draw his sword in wrath, and justice smile to see it done, and smite the traitors for the deaths of Matthews, Lount, and Anderson." And you can see actually those names right on the front of the box.
Okay, but when you say that out loud,
Yep.
it fits right into this is where you keep the secrets when you want to get vengeance or revenge on someone.
Expand a little bit.
Well, I would have literally where he says, "May vengeance draw."
Yep.
The word, and I can't see the rest of it.
His sword in wrath and justice.
Okay, so if there was someone I wanted to write their name on a piece of paper and put it in there and hope that this box find the justice or the revenge that I'm looking for.
Exactly. And he mentions, and justice smile to see it done, and smite the traitors for the deaths of Matthews, Lout, and Anderson.
Yeah.
So those must have been friends of his during the rebellion, I would imagine. And you're saying that he has carved those names on here because he wants their deaths.
Justice.
Yeah, it's pretty cool little box, isn't it?
It is a cool little box. It would be one that I would love to have my hands on.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of thing, it's an amazing reminder of a time we know nothing about, of difficulties, and of people who suffered in those days, and yet they were able to create this marvelous little box that had a beautiful sliding, the little top slides. I mean, imagine carving that with some little crappy piece of wood while you're languishing away in some crappy jail in the U.S., having run away from the rebellion.
Yeah. Could you imagine?
Yeah, no, I can't. Something to be cherished, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, Darcy, that's the end of today's episode, The Rise of Our Phoenix. Any more comments? Oh, I have to tell you what you had asked earlier on. I said, what remarkable activity occurred in the house in 1960 before it became Toronto property? And what happened is an exorcism.
Oh, but it didn't work.
You're right. A local Anglican archdeacon performed an exorcism. I mean, I didn't really think they did those things, frankly. And a blessing, supposedly to rid the house of its unworldly spirits. However, as you say, it didn't work. But after this incredibly rare religious procedure, the city updated the last item on the long list of artifacts from 82 Bond Street. And it used to read one ghost. That list now says one ghost and in brackets exorcised.
Oh, neat.
Cool, eh?
It is.
So there you go. But as you say, the exorcism didn't work.
Yep.
But would an exorcism remove ghosts that weren't harmful?
It can do all of that.
Oh, they can.
Yeah. Harmful ones, unharmful. But sometimes when you're doing an exorcism, it's really important that you specify what you're trying to get rid of.
Have you been involved in something like that?
Oh, I've done it once.
Can you tell us a little about it?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, but when you're actually doing that, you can, in your mind as you're doing it, choose the spirit you want to leave?
You have to do it out loud.
Oh, okay. Sorry, if you say it out loud, but you're choosing to stipulate an individual specific spirit that you want gone.
Yes.
Could you ask for more than one to go?
You could if there is more than one that needs to be taken away. But normally when you do an exorcism, you're looking to remove something evil.
Yeah, that's what I sort of think of it as. Not some fun little ghost that might pop up now and again, but something that's really evil.
Yes. It's really out there causing such a disturbance that you don't know which way you're going in.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to rehash just a minute here what sorts of accomplishments you had today. You very quickly tagged the name William. You talked about a reference to jail, and I know Don Jail came to your mind because we had done such a strong episode on the Don Jail recently, but your idea that it was a jail, that there were prisoners, really rang true because William Lyon MacKenzie himself became a prisoner in the U.S., and then we have the prisoner's carved box, and we know he was involved in the rebellion of 1837. So lots of issues regarding prisoners and jail. So I'm impressed that you were able to pick that up. You, I don't know how you did this, but you got the name MacKenzie. You called it the MacKenzie House, probably within 15 minutes. So you stole my thunder there. That was really cool. How did you get that?
It just came into my head.
Somebody's telling you then.
Yeah.
Wow. You talked about the British uniform, so you were right. It was a rebellion. It was the British from 1837, so they would have worn the red coat, the classic red coat, so you had that look. You talked about the red, white, and blue wearing female. That we don't have any news of.
No. If we go back to picture number 4, no, which one is it? Picture number...
Okay.
Okay, let me find it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Picture number 8.
8.
Guys,
The kitchen. No, 8 is the staircase.
No. The bedroom.
The bed? The bedroom number 9?
No.
Or the man's bedroom?
It looked like there was a kid in it.
Oh, that's the kitchen. Oh, you're right. The kitchen. It has the... Yeah, hang on. I have to find it myself. I think it's...
5. Number 5.
Number 5.
And if you look at the bed...
There it is, red, white, and blue. Shoot.
You look at it, and it still looks like a person.
Right, but earlier you said you thought it was a boy.
Well, I'm thinking it's still a boy, but it could... It's got such... That's why I thought it was a boy, because it's small in feature and statue.
Yeah.
But it could be a girl.
It could be, and the key is you nailed the idea that we had something to do with red, white, and blue well before we saw that photograph, so that's cool.
Okay.
And you talked about a maid. Now, there's been discussions of occurrences of another woman other than the long-haired woman who they think is Isabel MacKenzie, so that could be your maid.
Yes.
So I'd say you very quickly got the sense of William's personality, and I think that's really, really powerful. You got the idea that he is a firebrand, that he is a guy with principles, highly principled individual. Obviously, he was, organized a rebellion because he was so principled in how he felt the British were poorly treating Canadians, or whatever we were called at the time.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I wonder what we were called at the time.
Well, the province of Canada, but whether we were called Canadians, I don't really know.
Yeah.
That's something I hadn't even thought about till this moment. So there we have it. That's it for the Phoenix MacKenzie of Canada.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Darcy.
You're welcome.
During my editing of the Eerie Phoenix of Bond Street, I realized I had missed another of Darcy's insightful revelations. She correctly heard the E's sound as part of Mrs. MacKenzie's first name. Though she had immediately thought of Elizabeth, after a couple of moments Darcy mentioned it was something more Spanish-like, and of course she was right. Mrs. Mackenzie's first name was Isabel, note the E's sound, and the famous Queen Isabella of Castile helped unify Spain in the 15th century, and Isabel is a very popular girl's name in Spain. So well done again, Darce. At this point, I would usually give you a little teaser for the next episode, but this time, all I'm going to say is that we're making changes for Seeing Dead People, and you'll have to wait until next episode to discover more. Oh, and did you notice the little sound effects? They're courtesy of zapsplat.com, and I hope you like them. I think they add nice touches of mood and drama. We hope you've enjoyed listening to Seeing Dead People. Whatever's going on in Darcy's head, I think is so cool and astonishing. We'd love to hear from you with questions for Darcy about her psychic process or suggestions for other mystifying situations you would like us to investigate. So please, shoot us an email to info@radiosydney.ca with Seeing Dead People in the subject line. New episodes of Seeing Dead People will emerge on the first Saturday of every month and will also be available every Saturday night at 8 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10 a.m., both Pacific Standard Time. Seeing Dead People will also be available as a downloadable podcast online at radiosydney.ca for your convenience. Thanks so much for listening to Seeing Dead People. I really dig researching, writing, and communicating with Darcy and her otherworldly contacts. So until the next time, remember, Seeing Dead People is a blast with goosebumps guaranteed.
This has been a program of Radio Sydney.